It is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025, and you are at EDU Endpoint office hours. We're super excited to have a special guest joining us today. His name is Bradley Dupay. He's going to talk about Windows 365 Link. But before we get into that, we've got a few updates for you all. I put this slide up here, but clearly it's wrong. May 13th is Windows 365 Link. We are actually going to do auto patch technical deep dive on May 27th. And then June 10th will be our last session of the school year. So as this kind of semester winds down, summer starts, we know you all get super busy. We've got lots of we've got the email distribution list. We've got the team set up. We've got the group on LinkedIn. So lots of ways to engage and interact with each other if you have questions throughout the summer. But then we will take a kind of brief hiatus on these meetings over the summer. There's always a lot of change within Microsoft, so it's good for us to have a little bit of a break. And then we'll start off again in August. And we got a couple of hot mics in there. Richard, can you mute the attendees?
Yeah, I'll take a look.
Thanks. All right. The other thing that I wanted to inform you all of is we've got a survey out there. We talked about this last time. Just want to get some feedback from you all on how these sessions work, or our engagement with you all. Is the content good? Are you getting value out of these calls? Just stuff like that can help us kind of gear towards refining the call and optimizing it for better experiences for you all in the next school year. So we'll throw the link in the chat here if you haven't gotten it yet. I think Richard sent out an email earlier last week. So if you haven't filled that out, we would greatly appreciate your feedback on that so that we can make sure that we are giving you the best experience for your time. Okay, I'm going to actually share my screen for a few of these announcements, and then we'll throw the links in the chat too. So it's funny, you guys are kind of talking about the Windows app. We'll actually start with that here in just a moment. Let me make sure I get the right screen. See, Richard, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Perfect. So, yeah, there is now the Windows app on the web. That is actually the Windows app. A lot of the code base has been updated and put on the web app itself for Windows 365 users. If you're accessing Windows 365, your cloud PCs through that windows365.microsoft.com, you'll know that you'll actually now be redirected to the Windows app on the web. And we brought some new capabilities to this. So we now have a remote app launcher. This is very similar to the Windows app for Windows and Mac OS, to be able to access those remote apps that are published through Azure Virtual Desktop. So you can see those apps now within the Windows app on the web. We also have some improved printing capabilities and being able to access those remote sessions natively with that connect button directly in the web app itself. So it should actually launch that desktop from that connect button instead of going through some additional prompts there. So some good improvements there on that Windows app. And I really only call this out because as some of you have been leveraging Azure Virtual Desktop in your environments, you've seen that remote desktop client, we talked about it before, it's being deprecated. So you need to make that shift to the Windows app, but also the windows365.microsoft.com URL that is being redirected now to the Windows app on the web as well. So the next one that we wanted to share with you all is improved data sharing in Hot Patch is now available in Windows Auto Patch. So last week we had Chris Tulip actually join us and talk about Auto Patch and give us a brief overview of that. We got that posted to YouTube as well. So if you missed that session, highly encourage you to go check that out. And after he was busy talking with us, he went and published this blog about some improved control and consent over data sharing, specifically when it comes to auto patch and having better reporting diagnostic data within the console itself. So really just wanted to call this out, that those reports are going to be a little bit more precise in the information that they provide to you. And then we also have some improved troubleshooting. So here it says the Windows Auto Patch Client Broker improves the ability to troubleshoot issues. So that's one of the features of Auto Patch, is being able to remediate those issues a lot faster. And starting in June 2025, that client broker can now be targeted however you want. So that broker was able to identify if devices had their sources from a different location for Windows Update, where it's pulling that content from. And as you need to remediate that, as you implement auto patch within your environment and get that remediated, we'll have better visibility into that. So that should be helpful, especially for us as EDU customers. Now that we've got auto patch and we're starting to enable that, that should help you in that migration. Hot patch updates are also now available through Windows Auto Patch, which is really exciting. I think Chris actually touched on that briefly in his session last week. We didn't dive too much into detail around this, but this is what we were kind of talking about for next week, is getting a little bit more into the technical weeds around auto patch and how this all works within your quality updates. How does that work with your existing Windows Update rings itself? But hot patch updates are now available to come through Windows Auto Patch. So really exciting there. This right here was a blog that was published from the Intune support team about managing and migrating your Macs. So this was actually written by Neil Johnson, who is one of the principal PMs, and he's really responsible for Mac management within Intune. He also runs the Mac admins group, or is one of the key hosts of that, if you will. So if you've ever interacted with the Mac admins group, you've likely seen his replies here. He wrote this blog about managing Mac OS in your environment based on his customer engagements and his own learnings of customers starting to integrate Macs into Microsoft Intune itself. So he's put a lot of great work into how you should think about doing this. So if this is something you're exploring over the summer, looking at the designing and the planning, testing, migration path for all of that, and how you can get started. So just a great framework to consider and kind of review before you start that rollout, but also some common issues and things that you can look out for and be preemptive for when you're rolling those devices. So again, it's pretty comprehensive. It's a long blog. An example of the migration experience that he's got recorded and posted to YouTube. So again, that one's a great resource. I think that you all should pay attention to, especially if you are looking at migrating your Macs. All right, the other one, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't read this one too far in depth, but I wanted to call it out, was that there was a support tip about Microsoft Intune compliance policies that were reporting a SyncML 500 error. So if you're having issues with that, I wanted to call this out. Again, I did not read all of this, but if that's something that you are facing, there's a new blog out there that you should pay attention to. A couple of more items that are less Intune or Windows 365 specific, but we now have a couple of new Copilot Plus PCs in the Surface line. So the Surface Pro 12-inch and the Surface Laptop 13-inch, if you haven't seen these yet, they're really nice devices. So wanted to call that out mostly because there was a blog published on a new generation of Windows experiences, which is really bringing those AI capabilities and Copilot experiences to those Copilot Plus PCs. So lots of great examples of where Copilot is starting to be highlighted directly within Windows. So adding an agent to settings to be able to interact with settings in new ways, ask it questions, help you navigate settings in different ways. Also improvements to the click to do functionality and Windows search in general. This is also highlighting things like reading coach. So I think this is really neat from an education perspective, being able to highlight text. And we're all probably familiar with highlighting text and bringing that into immersive reader in like Microsoft Edge, but now we've got an independent reading coach app that we integrate with as well, and we can pull that content directly into reading coach to help our young readers learn how to read based on their own text that they want. So that was exciting to see. New capabilities in photos, paint, snipping tool, being able to edit pictures in lightweight ways directly within Microsoft Paint. So wanted to just kind of inform you all of some of the ways that AI and Copilot is starting to influence Windows. And then there's another one that Richard threw in the document really quick that I don't have pulled up yet. So hang on 1 second while I get that. But Richard, I may have you talk about it specifically within the new Windows Insider builds, how we are bringing Copilot's vision to life directly within Windows. But I know, Richard, you mentioned this, so anything you want to add on this particular blog?
Yeah, so when you look at the stuff that Garrett showed prior, most of those features actually require an NPU. So this is why we highlight these things through the Copilot Plus PC experience. But with Copilot on Windows, what we're doing now with the new Copilot app, we're actually starting to integrate vision. I think last call I may have talked about this a bit, but starting yesterday, in the Windows Insider branches, we have now enabled the new Copilot app to allow for vision of the whole PC. So before, vision was only there for Edge, and it was fairly impressive. But now that we can do this with the whole PC, this starts to unlock a lot of interesting things. Imagine being able to just have an end, or just any user really, be able to just ask questions about a new app that they've never used before. Maybe you're using Photoshop and you're not a photographer, you don't do a lot of photo editing, but you need to do something to a picture, and you've never used Photoshop before. You can just simply ask Copilot Vision how to do that. And so as we start to roll this out, so right now this actually doesn't require an NPU. And in fact, I don't think Vision's going to require an NPU at all. So you'll be able to use this functionality on just any Windows PC. But moving forward, as we start to roll this out to non-insider builds, so as we get it out into production, you'll start to be able to do a lot more with this. So I think it's pretty cool. Usually we don't talk a lot about Windows Insider builds and a lot of the functionality that's coming from there. But if you do have a chance to get onto the Insider build or get like a test PC or something, you don't have to use your main desktop or whatever, but go get a PC, put it on Insider and start playing with Vision, because I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then the last thing that we wanted to share with you all, which is kind of, I'll admit it's a little sales pitchy here, but there's currently a promo right now for Windows 365. So if you are investigating Windows 365 as an option within your environment, we are offering a 20% discount on all Windows 365 plans, all the way through October 2025. So again, before you get that quote signed, sealed, and delivered, with purchase order, make sure that you get that discount taken advantage of. I know a lot of customers, their budgets are being approved in July. So if this is on the docket for you all, definitely take advantage of that. And if you haven't taken a look at Windows 365 and you want to, we have some research opportunities that we talked about last time. But I think that's a perfect segue to hand it over to Bradley. So Bradley, are you with us and are you ready to present?
I am here. Let me, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get rid of my background because we're going to do some live action demos today. And then I'm going to share some slides. Give me 1 second here. Let's try this. You see my slides okay?
Yep, got it.
Yep, we got it.
Okay. And I've gone into full screen, so I'm going to ask Garrett, if you don't mind, just keep an eye on the chat. Maybe when we get to the demo, if people have questions, just start throwing them in the chat as we go. And then maybe if there's some time at the end, we can go back and circle with the chat. Certainly, as we get into the link stuff, we can take some questions and I'll do some active Q&A there. Let me introduce myself. Yeah, let me introduce myself to the audience. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Bradley Dupay. Been at Microsoft about 16 years. I'm currently the business development manager for Windows 365. So my team essentially leads our go-to-market here in North America. We've got exposure and reach and touch to nearly every single Windows 365 customer here in this hemisphere. And so we've been really kind of shepherding this product to market over the last 4.5 years. We're kind of like the tip of the spear, both from a technical standpoint and from a business standpoint. And so there's a high degree of likelihood that maybe you've come across somebody from my team in the past. We do a lot of work with your account teams, but we definitely get engaged directly with our customers as well. So again, it's a pleasure to be here today. We're going to talk about Windows 365 Link. I've got my device right here. We're going to do some demos here in just a minute. I always find that we kind of get ahead of ourselves a little bit if we just start with Link, because I want to make sure that we're crystal clear on our product strategy for Windows 365. And so if I could just take maybe a couple of minutes here and just help you understand a little bit of kind of how we think about Windows 365. I heard some mention of AVD earlier. Certainly, as maybe we're talking about using the Windows app already. Maybe you're an existing AVD customer. Certainly, if you're using anything like Remote App today to deliver apps out of our cloud, you're an AVD customer. And so when my team brought Windows 365 to market 4.5 years ago, the biggest question that we got from customers is, I thought you already had a cloud-based VDI offering. And so it took us about a year or so to really kind of get past I'll say the identity crisis. And we sort of emerged on the other side, and it's pretty crystal clear to us now just exactly what we're up to here with Windows 365. We didn't set out to be another hosted VDI offering, but instead with Windows 365, we took the physical PC on the journey to the cloud. I'll say very, very similar to maybe how you think about something like Exchange Server went to Exchange Online. We've taken this software as a service wrapper. We've put it around a physical PC desktop to where we deliver from the cloud. And as such, you benefit from things like our financially backed SLA, our commitment to continuous innovation, our security, compliance, trust, and transparency story. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, but we've now sort of come back for the Windows desktop, and we're taking it on this journey to this software as a service cloud, where you think about it as subscription and elasticity and capacity on demand. And as such, we've crowned Windows 365 the cloud PC. We have no intention of being hosted VDI, but we're an alternative for VDI that does really well. In fact, I would say greater than 50% of our current install base is probably former VDI customers, whether that's our friends over at Citrix, VMware, or even ex-AVD customers. Customers are choosing Windows 365 because it mirrors the models that you might have in place that you use to manage your physical PCs. And so I think it's really interesting as we start to layer in Link, and I'll bring the Link story into this here in just a second, but I want to talk a little bit about how we've gone to market with Windows 365. But make no mistake about it, we think that the future of Windows is powered by the cloud. And so Windows 365, our intent here is not to, again, just go play in the sandbox that's existing VDI customers, but we think about expanding the market for delivering a cloud-based PC to everyone who has a physical PC today. And really, this is the market that Link ushers in. Want to just talk a little bit about how Windows 365 comes alive for our customers. If you're familiar with Windows 365, certainly you're probably familiar with kind of the hero experience, which is Windows 365 Enterprise. It's a named user license. Every user gets a cloud PC. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We, Microsoft, don't do any power optimization. You don't save any money if you turn it off when it's not in use. What you get is you get a per user, per month, kind of all you can eat desktop in the cloud. I like to think of it as like you just bought a Surface from us, and we rack it in an Azure data center, and we deliver it to you via the Windows app on any device. More recently, we've branched into two new capabilities that we've called Windows 365 Frontline. I always kind of like to say I'm not a huge fan of the Frontline branding, because as you think about other frontline products from Microsoft, you might know them as, browser only or watered down capabilities, smaller mailbox sizes, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the case for Windows 365 Frontline. What we really have with Windows 365 Frontline is a concurrent user licensing model. And so again, if you have experience with other VDI products, you'll know that other vendors have licensed their products in a concurrent user model. And that's essentially what we've introduced here in our cloud, in our SaaS cloud with Windows 365 Frontline. We've got two different modalities, one of which is brand new. The first one is what we call dedicated mode. And this is just like Windows 365 Enterprise, where everyone gets their own cloud PC. But what we at Microsoft enable you to do is to deploy more cloud PCs than the licenses that you buy. Essentially, you buy the number of active sessions, and we allow you to over provision the offering to a ratio of 3-to-1, okay? And that's kind of what you see here in the diagram. So if I buy one license, I can deploy 3 cloud PCs. It's not a shared cloud PC. Everyone gets their own cloud PC, their own named cloud PC. But at any given time, you can only have 1/3 of the total cloud PCs that you deployed logged in. And so in this case, again, let's just use a scale example. You buy 100 licenses, we will let you provision 300 cloud PCs. At any given time, only 100 users can be logged in. Now, you're not tattooing that license to 3 users. You manage your active sessions as a pool. And so when 10 users log off, 10 totally different users can log in. You just manage it as a set of active sessions. Okay, that's dedicated mode. What we just recently introduced was this new model called shared mode. And what shared mode is essentially a non-personalized experience. I want you to think about it as like a non-persistent VDI environment. Okay. I like to describe this also as a loaner pool of cloud PCs. Think of it maybe like a device license where I can take, one of my frontline licenses. Let's say I take 10 frontline licenses and deploy them in shared mode. Okay. Essentially, I would have 10 cloud PCs in a pool that are configured identically. Okay. Same apps, same settings. And what I can do is I can assign that pool to an unlimited number of users. Okay, there's no cap. Over on the dedicated mode, because everyone got their own cloud PC, there was a 3-to-1 cap. Here, it's an unlimited ratio. So I could assign this pool of 10 cloud PCs to 100 users. We still follow this concurrent user license model, because if I get, let's say, 5 people to come in and log into shared mode cloud PCs, I have 5 remaining in the pool. Okay, so it's naturally concurrent because as soon as 10 people in my example log in, there's no more cloud PCs in the pool. And of course, you can't support any more users than the number that you've deployed. Now, what happens when a user is done with their shared mode cloud PC? Our service scrubs the personal data. So we clean the user's profile and any data that they have off of the device. And then we return it to the pool and we mark it as available for use again. Okay. There's ability for you to, I want you to think about it a little bit like we re-provision the machine and we put it back in the pool for use. So you can think about your lab scenarios. You can think about, whether it's a computer lab or a training lab, having the ability to just leverage the Windows 365 service to create the same desktop over and over and over, and you're essentially managing these as a pool and then licensing by active session, kind of like a device license. This is the way that shared mode is implemented. Now, I'll just, last thing I'll mention here kind of on this licensing front is that Windows 365 Frontline is the license. Shared mode or dedicated mode is actually determined by you at deployment time. Okay, so you can mix and match these 2 different modes for a frontline license or for your pool of frontline licenses, as you need. If you need people to have dedicated licenses, you can do this 3-to-1. If you need people or you want to deploy scenarios that support more this loaner pool type approach, you can put your licenses in shared mode. If you need to mix, you can mix and match. All right. So I wanted to just touch a little bit. This is brand new. I think it's just important to cover kind of these three different, right? We've got enterprise, dedicated, frontline dedicated, and then now we have this shared mode pooled. They all today work with a Windows 365 Link device. And so as we think about using Link to connect to Windows 365, know that you can, mix and match these different use case scenarios against your Link devices. And then finally, I want to mention this as well, because I think this is also germane to the 20% offer that you're seeing. But, we're coming up on this important moment in the life cycle of Windows 10. Next October, Windows 10 goes end of life. I just want to mention for Windows 365, you're covered for extended security updates at no cost for the cloud PC, but unique to Windows 365, we will also cover the physical devices as well. So if you have physical PCs that can't migrate to Windows 11, you can essentially use Windows 365 to deliver Windows 11 to Windows 10 hardware, and then leverage that ESU entitlement to keep security updates on that Windows 10 hardware. This is a popular strategy for customers that have hardware that may be still under warranty, or they might even still be paying for it, that's not eligible for Windows 11. But I think it's also germane to think about that in terms of the strategy as we put new hardware in market as well. Maybe you want to do an evaluation on something like Windows 365 Link. You're coming up to the end of life on some of your Windows 10 devices and you feel like you're going to run out of time. If this entitlement can give you the ability to do an evaluation of Link for an additional 6 months so that you can determine, how you might roll these out at scale, leverage this entitlement to your advantage. All right. That being said, let's talk about Windows 365 Link. I heard somebody come off of mute. I don't know if we've just got a hot mic or if somebody has a question. I'll pause for a second. Okay. Sounds like maybe we've got a hot mic.
Yep.
Garrett,
think
if you
you're
don't
good.
mind.
Yep. On it.
Okay. All right. So let me talk a little bit about Windows 365 Link. We announced this device at Ignite in November. And essentially, I want you to think about this device as the world's first Windows 365 Cloud PC, right? Cloud PC hardware. This is the hardware side of that Cloud PC SaaS desktop. This is the hardware embodiment of what we've built from a SaaS standpoint, where you just assign a license to a user, it provisions a PC in the cloud. It's automatically enrolled in Intune, it's registered in Entra, and the user can use it much like they use their physical desktop today. A real familiar experience, great application compatibility, fidelity. They use their apps like they normally do. I want you to think about this Windows 365 hardware, or this Link device, like we've just extended the ports, almost like we've gone into the Azure data center and put, cables so that you can do things like plug peripherals into your cloud PC, so that you can plug a monitor or other devices into your cloud PC. Okay. I want you to think about this device like it's transparent. Okay. But I don't want you to think that transparent means no value, because there's a ton of engineering that goes into the Windows 365 Link operating system. Oops, looks like here we go. Okay, the Windows 365 Link operating system, there's a ton of work that goes in there. The Defender team has code in this box. The Entra team has code in this box. The Intune team has code in this box. The Teams team, I could go on and on with all of our different platform groups and platform capabilities. This has been a collaboration amongst many teams to be able to bring this simplistic, but yet very end user productive experience to market. Okay, so this is. I'm just going to point out a couple of things here in the marketing content. We are christening this also as the first cloud PC device purpose-built by Microsoft. It is a desktop form factor. It's not intended on being mobile. I might represent it a little bit as mobile today because I do take this device with me, and so I've got a portable monitor. I'll share my setup here in just a second. But the idea is, this would work excellent in things like computer labs paired with a Windows 365 Frontline shared. This would work great where you have end users with permanent desks or hot desking scenarios. My commercial customers are using this for things like call centers, help desk, and other kind of shared kiosk type environments as well, right? And so in areas where maybe you need people to access their own cloud PCs, but you want to have them leverage, shared hardware, this device is super simple and purpose built for that. I'll just mention it is for sale here in the United States. We did GA this device on April 2nd. The price point is $350. If you want to compare this to a thin client in the market, I would just say, Link is probably the most fully featured thin client out there, but it's not our intent to sort of dub this a new entrant. Just like we don't call Windows 365 VDI, we're not necessarily calling Windows 365 Link an entrant in the VDI market. All right, let's do a little bit of a teardown here, and then we'll get to the demos because I'm sure that's what you want to see. Okay. The device is Visa compliant. It's 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. And so we've got customers that are doing things like buying mounts to mount these right on the back of a monitor. You can kind of, hide it from view. It does have a display port as well as an HDMI port, and it does power a monitor via the USB-C port. We do state that it has dual 4K monitor support, so it can power 2 monitors. It does power more than 2 monitors, but the total resolution of less than 4K, to have a good experience, if you want to power 3 4K monitors with this, you might start seeing some lag. Okay. It's got 2 USB-A ports on the back, as well as 1 on the front. A real popular question is, why didn't we put USB-C ports on the front, or more USB-C ports? And I'd say, well, that's because we had an idea to do that, but then we got complaints that there wasn't a lot of USB-A ports on the device. Actually, as we think about some of these environments that this device might go in, a lot of customers have expressed, legacy peripherals, whether they're barcode scanners or even cameras, mice, and keyboards. Typically, the legacy fleet supporting USB-A, we opted to go with more USB-A ports. There is 1 USB-C port. It is not powered. There is a separate power jack. We did also include, an audio jack on the front, Ethernet. It does have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. There is no built-in NFC capability in this device, but there are NFC drivers, and it will support an external NFC reader. Okay. This is a specialized operating system inside of Windows 365 Link. We call it the Windows CPC, or Cloud PC Operating System. It is Windows. This device does run Windows. It is a stripped down version of Windows that's locked down and hardened. We do not allow customers to install third-party software on these devices, nor do we allow for the installation of things like drivers, whether that be for peripherals or printers or other things. The idea is Microsoft services all the code in this box, and our customers just plug it in and use it. We do have a wide range of peripherals that are supported. Our product group is continuously taking feedback from customers. A good example would be the support for an NFC reader. There was no support until the GA for NFC readers until we had a number of customers that had in the healthcare industry, users wanted to sort of badge in and log in with them. So we've added NFC support. In education, if there's a number of peripherals that you want to see support for something like Link, I'd love for you to provide feedback to your account team and get that feedback to me so that we can evaluate, how we can accommodate that. Another thing to just note here, there is no anything on this device, right? There's no local apps. There's no user accounts on this device. There's no data on this device. None of your company data or school data is on this device, okay? And as such, this device does not support Hello for Business for authentication, because I am not going to escrow any credentials into the TPM on this device, okay? So to support modern authentication, we recommend customers use something like a FIDO2 key, or like I was, talking earlier, something with either NFC support. I'll go through and I'll demonstrate logging into the device with a YubiKey here in just a second. Okay. I did mention that the Defender team has code. This device does run Windows, and so we have things like Secure Boot and BitLocker. It runs Defender EDM. It's got TPM in it. All the things that we use to secure the Windows estate for many customers around the world are present in this box. And so, our customers can, rest assured, if your security strategy today is built on top of Windows native using Defender, this device will just snap right into your operations processes. Okay. Finally, I'll just say, sustainability is a big story for us with this device. There's a high percentage of recycled materials that go into the build of a Link device. And so, we think that there's an opportunity to really cut down on e-waste as we think about, servicing the Windows 365 Link device as well as the user experience, servicing the user experience through Windows 365, the cloud PC, right? This device really just needs to power your peripherals and get you connected to your cloud PC. And so therefore, I'll just say, I'll highlight right here on this slide, we will be supporting this device for at least 6 years. Okay. We have experience with the hardware that we've put into this device that we think these devices can have a usable shelf life, if you will, of 6 years or longer. And so if you think that's like 2 device refresh cycles, you could continue to, service your cloud PCs and manage your cloud PCs, and then utilize these Link devices for what could be, maybe 2 PC refresh cycles if you had a 3-year refresh cycle. And that will dramatically cut down, potentially on the amount of, e-waste, if you will, that's created during the PC life cycle. And so there's an emerging story on the sustainability of Windows 365 Link that's directly tied to, subscription-based end user computing with Link itself. All right. Without that further ado, I am going to discard my ink. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to take a quick peek at the chat here just to see what kind of questions we got. Do we got questions? Okay, great. Yeah, Garrett, go after it. If you can answer some questions, great. Yep, and Intel N250. All right, I'll just assume. Maybe I'll circle back here in just a minute. Let's get on with the demo. I'm going to flip over. All right, so here's my setup. I've got my Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. Here's my Link device. It's not plugged in yet, and then I've got a portable monitor. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to see if I can set this up where you can see what I'm doing. Give me 1 second. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in USB-C for monitor. I'm going to go ahead and plug in the power. And so the light just came on the front of the Link device. And you'll see it boot up here. I got some glare, but all right. So immediately, that was probably 10 seconds, we got right to the login screen. And it says, insert your security key to log into the device. I'm just going to show you, if I click on this globe here, it gives me the ability to put in my username. Just move this a little bit closer. Everything else is higher. Let me just grab something quick here. Oh, that might be too high. All right. Back this up a little bit. Okay, so I could put a username in here. If you don't have multi-factor authentication or FIDO keys, if I put my email address in here, the next screen's going to ask me for a password. I'm just going to go back to my YubiKey. I'll plug it into the front USB-A port. It says something went wrong. Let's try that again. All right, let's just second here.
my Bluetooth keyboard needs to be reset. Full transparency, there was a firmware update that happened right before. Again. Demo gods aren't with us today. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to unplug it. We're going to plug it back in. Go through the boot sequence again. Okay, look at that. Worked right away. So I'm going to go ahead and put my pin in to unlock the YubiKey. And then it wants me to touch the YubiKey. I didn't have to put my username in because it's going to use the last identity that I used on my YubiKey. And so now you saw I had to reboot the device, but it's probably been less than 30 seconds and I'm into my cloud PC. Okay. And that's the simplicity of the experience that we've created with Windows 365 Link. Okay. And one thing you'll notice is I have Word up on the screen here. This Word document's probably been open for maybe close to 30 days or a little bit longer. I'm just trying to move a little bit closer. And so it's instant resume. This is the Windows 365 Enterprise experience. And so let's just see how well you guys can see things. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and just switch from Word here into Teams. One of the things that we have within Windows 365 is the support for things like Teams optimizations. And so if I go into Teams here and click Settings and About Teams, you'll see right here, it says Slim Core Media Optimized, okay? Link has built into it the ability for us to do media optimization with Teams so that we can take, say, a video feed from your video camera and audio from your headset and send it directly to the Teams service rather than routing it through the Cloud PC. If you're familiar with how we do this on AVD, it's the same technology. If you use Citrix or VMware or something today for VDI, those providers have a lot of the optimization capabilities as well. We are working actively right now with both Cisco and Zoom for distribution rights to be able to distribute the plugins required for Windows 365 to do Zoom and WebEx optimizations inside the Link device. Okay, so those should end up being managed by us. Cross your fingers that those commercial contracts can get signed, but we will have the ability to do the top 3 popular collaboration platforms, WebEx, Zoom, and Teams inside the Cloud PC device. Okay, I see some questions in here about things like Bluetooth pairing. If I go ahead and press Control-Alt-Delete, one of the things I get here is the ability to interface with the Link device. And there's a little bit of glare, but I can go into the control panel here. I can do Bluetooth. And now, just like I would do this natively on a PC, you'll see I have Bluetooth device support. I can go into the device and I can add a keyboard and a mouse and other Bluetooth peripherals if I want. So, really kind of native look and feel. I don't do this outside of kind of the Cloud PC experience. Control-Alt-Delete, hit the control panel, pair up my Bluetooth devices. Another thing that we support, let's see if I can do this. I'm going to open an in-private browser. And I'm going to go ahead and open Windows 365 admin. Okay, so since I'm in private, it prompts me for credentials. I'm going to go ahead and put my ID in here. The other thing that we support, let's see if we can get it to work. Okay. The other thing that we support is WebAuthn redirection. So when I get an authentication prompt inside the Cloud PC, I can actually send it back to the link device for authentication. And so now what the prompt that you're seeing here is actually the link device. You'll notice from the app Windows 365.exe, this is the link device prompting me to interface with my YubiKey. And so we can actually take the hardware form factor for authentication, the hardware token for authentication that's external to the Cloud PC, and use it in session. And it allows me to authenticate the apps and websites. And here I get into Intune. Okay, so we understand that the Cloud PC compute is running in an Azure data center, and there's certain experiences where we want that integration with the local device. Okay, things obviously like pairing peripherals, like the Teams experience, like the authentication experiences when you have a hardware token. Okay, one other thing that I can show you would be like if we go to YouTube. Okay, we've also got multimedia redirection. Okay, so let me just show you this right here. Okay, multimedia redirection. What this is that we can actually overlay things like YouTube videos, where we're actually streaming the YouTube content to the local link device, and link overlays the video where it should be in the browser. And so we're doing all the audio and video rendering locally on the link device and displaying it to the user. And this is all native and seamless. This multimedia redirection plugin is provided by our Cloud PCs in the gallery image, and all the code needed to make that work is built right into Link. And so it's just a couple of examples again of how we understand the blend between what might be great to have a local experience, but you don't necessarily have to abandon kind of the use of virtual desktop technologies in order to deliver on that local experience. All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to flip back, go to the camera here, and I see we've got about 10 minutes left. I'd be happy to take some Q&A if there's other features or experiences. Actually, I can kind of already think of a couple other things I could show you. It's really easy. If I just flip back, I'll just kind of solicit some questions here in the chat. But if I flip back, the Windows key and L brings you to the lock screen. Okay. And the interesting thing about locking a physical PC is what do? You Control-Alt-Delete to unlock it. In this case, when I lock the link device, my Cloud PC is still running in the cloud, and another user could sign into this device. My Cloud PC isn't tied to this link device. And so, again, if I had a set of hot desks, or a call center or a computer lab, I could take any one of those devices, sign in, I would instantly resume to my Cloud PC. Right? If I just go ahead, plug my YubiKey back in, sign in, we keep the connection alive on your Cloud PC on this specific device for 15 minutes. If someone else logs in, we'll connect to their Cloud PC, but you notice it didn't have to set up the RDP connection. And so we have, again, these like local experiences that when I lock and unlock a Cloud PC, it's like instant resume. We're already connected to your Cloud PC. So again, these little details where the link device can really make it feel like your Cloud PC is running locally. Okay, Imprivata on the roadmap. Just going to say TBD. It's going to come to AVD first, and it will likely be a little while before we can stitch the engineering story together. I'm aware that there's active work going on the Imprivata side. It's a collaboration with a third party, and it's going to take some joint engineering to get that work. AVD is not on the Link roadmap for support. Okay, it was an intentional design choice where we think about AVD like VDI, and VDI, you know, we think about AVD as being flexible, you know, where in some cases or a lot of cases, VDI is used as a supplemental experience, you know, published apps. You know, I still want most of my compute to be done local, but I need to go consume an app. You know, Windows 365 and Link is this marriage between the cloud-based operating system and this lightweight, transparent PC device. Can it be used as a standalone? It requires Windows 365. There's no apps, no data, no user accounts on the device. So can it be used standalone? There's no way to log into the Link device to do anything. It really just facilitates a connection to your cloud PC. There is on the Link device, there is no Win32 app support. On the Windows 365 Cloud PC, there is a tremendous amount of Win32 app support. In fact, our Aperture team has made a statement that if your apps run on Windows 10 or Windows 11 on a physical PC, that we will apply our Aperture team to ensure that there's app compatibility against Windows 365. So your Win32 apps, that's what Windows 365 you know, was designed for. This is a hallmark and a virtue of the Windows operating system. I'm going to share a screen. The Windows 365 Link device, they are Entra joined. You can see right here inside of Intune, I have a device. You'll see the model shows up as Windows 365 Link. This is super important because I can write, you know, dynamic device groups or device filters to create policies that apply to Link devices only. I can create conditional access rules to maybe, you know, only allow certain people to connect to Windows 365 if they're coming from a Link device that's, you know, joined to your Entra ID. And so, you know, this keeps, you know, students and faculty and other folks from logging into their cloud PC on, say, their phone or any other device, right? So there's a ton of attributes that are specific and unique to Link, just like you'd expect if this was, you know, a PC of any other kind of make and model.
Bradley, that was great. I gotta say that was one of the first times I've seen an actual live demo of Link. Obviously, we've seen it a couple of times within Microsoft, but for everyone on the call, I know that that was greatly appreciated. Just kudos to showing that off and even showing the management experience here. I think that was something that was brought up, you know, on the Windows CPC side, right? That is a thin Windows, stripped down version of Windows, but full support in Intune, as you can see. So we see this device, it's managed directly inside of Intune. We got that model support, so we can build those roles. I think that's huge.
Yeah, let me just add one thing on that. Our documentation on Link is improving all the time. And just a couple of weeks ago, we published every CSP that Link supports. And so as you want to go to our documentation to see what kind of things you can do to manage Link devices, you know, we have things like, you know, location redirection settings, like whether you want to allow, you know, location information to be passed from the Link device into the cloud PC to set the clock. You know, there's all kinds of CSP support for the Link device. You know, the management folks on the phone here that want to just go browse, they kind of just get an idea of like, here's the type of things that we think you should be able to manage on a Link device. If you apply a CSP that doesn't have a support in Link, we just ignore it.
Yeah, Matthew's got a really good question. What are the biggest advantages to using Link running a cloud PC versus existing hardware that they may have? Whether that be another thin client out there or just a physical PC.
Look, it's a really good question. I have a number of customers that are looking at Link in a device refresh scenario where a user has a desktop PC today. So again, I acknowledge it's not a clamshell or a laptop or a tablet form factor, which, you know, a lot of customers, you know, support their employee populations with today. But where you have desktop devices and want to move to this model of subscription-based end user computing, Your options in the past was to buy a device that was designed for a local operating system, right? Like Windows, Mac, even some thin clients or other. And then, you either have multiple operating systems that you need to manage. You need to try to manage the experience of telling people log into Windows, go to the Windows app, and then log into Windows again. And now this provides this really kind of native experience where you just tell them to go to the linked device, sit down at the keyboard, put your username in, and sign in just like you do at any other Windows PC experience, and they get into their cloud PC. So, where we have customers that are doing device refresh for these, primarily shared space, shared PCs, and then users with desktop PCs. These are also really popular for IT pros, where I'm seeing that they have cloud PCs and maybe they want to run a link device at home, so then I have to bring a laptop, and then it's a weekend and you got some work to do. You just go right to your link device and you just sit down and you just start working. You don't have to pull your laptop out. So I think as this category continues to evolve, Jesse, this is kind of what I'm hinting here. As the category continues to evolve, we're super excited about Link being in market. We're helping encourage customers to adopt Link where a desktop form factor makes sense. We're well aware of the demand and the interest. There's more engineering work that needs to be done in order to support things like a mobile Link device. So, for example, obviously this doesn't have a battery in it. Link doesn't have a battery in it. There's no power. We stripped all the power management settings out of the Cloud PC OS. And so, if we're going to put that back together, or for example, a laptop device, you might think, hey, I might want Hello for Business. And so now we have to think about how we reintroduce some concepts that we stripped out, but yet keep the device lightweight and kind of keep the promise of, no apps, no data, no company data, et cetera. So, there's more engineering work to be done. Link is fully GA. And if you're looking for a desktop type experience, just a quick plug on how you might acquire a Link device. We don't have a loaner program established yet. We do sell them direct through our company store, our e-commerce store. So the same place you might, get Surface devices or Surface quotes from us. We do have them also in the reseller channel. I'm aware that Insight and SHI have inventory on these devices today, and we're working with CDW and others to bring those to market. So, you think about the cost factor, it's $350, 6-year life cycle. It's about $5.50 a month. That 20% promo that we just put in market, think about it as everyone gets a Link device for free if you calculate it over 6 years, right? So, there's just plenty of ways to think about the most fully featured thin client on the market. It's got Teams optimization support for, FIDO keys on day one. Again, we continue to think about all the things you'd expect of these rich experiences. They're in this device on day one.
Yeah, thanks again, Bradley. This was fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on today and giving us that live demo. It was very, very cool to see. What we'll do is, if there are any additional questions that we don't have the answers to, we may ping you on the side and get those answered. But definitely appreciate you coming out today. Fantastic presentation. But I think that's all that we've got time for today. So we're going to go ahead and wrap. We'll get this recording posted to YouTube here momentarily. And again, Bradley, just can't thank you enough. Appreciate you being here. All right. Y'all have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.